Imagine waking up one morning only to find that your reflection in the mirror wears a mask, not just of porcelain or plastic, but of something far more insidious. It's the mask of normalcy, a facade meticulously crafted over years, maybe decades. But beneath it, something is quietly unraveling, a subtle erosion of your most essential self. You clutch at the contours of familiarity because normal whispers safety, yet it chokes you in its silent embrace. How did conformity become so suffocating that the very act of being normal feels like a slow death? And why, despite its comforting promise, does it tighten like a noose around your creative pulse, your joy, your freedom? Stop for a moment. Consider this. The word normal itself is almost hypnotic. It draws people into its orbit with a seductive promise. Be like everyone else, fit into the neat rows and columns of society's spreadsheet, and you'll be safe. You'll be loved, respected, even happy. But what if this promise is a lie? What if the relentless pursuit of normality is not the path to safety at all, but a slow descent into invisibility, a quiet annihilation of your soul's unique resonance? There is a paradox here so sharp it cuts like a blade. The very thing society tells you to chase to live fully, being normal, may be the very thing that kills you slowly from the inside out. Imagine the pressure's weight as it gathers silently in your chest every morning. You button your shirt with trembling fingers, adjust your tie or smooth your skirt, all to become someone who can slip seamlessly into the crowd. You smile at the right moment, say the expected things, laugh at the jokes you don't understand, all in service of this fragile illusion. You even start to believe it yourself, convincing your fragmented inner voice that this version of you, polished, predictable, safe, is the one worth preserving. But ask yourself, what happens to the fragments you hide? The odd thoughts, the wild dreams, the impulses that don't fit the mold. Are they locked away in a dark cell inside your mind, whispered to in moments of private despair, waiting to be obliterated beneath layers of social scripts? There's an eerie silence in this internal exile, a silence that echoes with loss. The loss of risk, of authenticity, of raw, unedited humanity. It has been said that we live in a culture obsessed with control, with predictability, with sameness. And yet, this obsession breeds anxiety, depression, and a staggering epidemic of disconnection. How ironic that the more we attempt to be normal, to smooth our rough edges, to dull our vibrant chaos, the more fractured and isolated we become. Isn't it a cruel joke that in the very act of trying to belong, you might be severing the threads that connect you to yourself? Think about the stories we tell ourselves to justify this compromise. Being normal means being stable. Being normal means not rocking the boat. Being normal means not threatening anyone. But what's the cost of stability if it's bought at the price of your spirit? What boat is truly being rocked when you speak your deepest truths, when you allow yourself to be seen in all your complexity? And if you never threaten anyone, never disturb the social order, then what is your role as a person, as a force in the world? Are you merely a ghost in the machinery, a shadow with no substance or light? This contradiction, the push to be normal versus the pull of authentic existence, generates an existential tension that gnaws at the core of your being. The word normal becomes a weapon, wielded not just by society but by your own fears. It whispers that deviation means failure, that difference means danger, that uniqueness is a liability. And you, in the quiet moments when the mask slips, feel the sting of these lies cutting deep. You feel the slow suffocation, the fade into gray. But what if normality is not the endpoint? What if it's the starting point of a deeper question about what it truly means to live? What if normal is just a mirage, a convenient fiction that obscures something far more vital, a mosaic of imperfection, unpredictability, and vivid, messy humanity? Imagine the life you might reclaim if you stopped trying to fit yourself into a shape that was never made for you. Imagine the freedom in embracing the discomfort of being different, the exhilaration of stepping into the unknown parts of yourself. Now imagine the terror that this freedom might provoke. The fear that if you step outside the lines, you will be rejected, lonely, vulnerable. The haunting question: can you endure the chaos of authenticity? These questions linger in the air, unanswerable yet urgent. They press against your ribs, demanding a reckoning. Is it possible that the deathly grip of normal is not just external but internal? That you are your own jailer, clutching tight the chains forged from the fear of judgment, failure, and abandonment? And if so, where does the key lie? In the acceptance of your fractured, complicated self? Or in the endless pursuit of an ideal that no one, not even your reflection, can ever embody? The paradox deepens. To live fully, must you die to normal? To reclaim your vitality, do you have to shatter the very foundation on which your comfort stands? And if you dare, what awaits on the other side? Chaos or life? Loss or rebirth? Before answers emerge, these questions settle like a storm inside you, relentless and raw. They demand that you confront the invisible epidemic suffocating your generation and every generation before it, the quiet killing of souls by the tyranny of normalcy. So pause now in this charged silence, because what comes next will unravel the threads you thought were secure. It will expose the machinery behind the mask, the cultural scripts that bind you, and the hidden cost of living a lie called normal. It will confront the devastation wrought not by chaos or difference, but by the relentless, crushing pursuit of sameness. Are you ready to face what normality has taken from you? To see the wounds inflicted by this invisible death? To understand why stopping this pursuit is not just liberation, but survival? This is where the journey truly begins. You feel it before you name it, an unspoken compulsion that tightens around your chest, a whisper that tells you who you should be, how you ought to move, speak, even desire. This force is ancient, yet insidiously modern. It is the relentless current beneath the tranquil surface of everyday life, pulling you toward something called normal. But why does this force exist? Why does your psyche cling so desperately to the familiar and the conventional, even when it erodes your sense of self? To understand this, you must peer into the labyrinth of the human mind and society, to the very mechanisms that compel you to wear a mask stitched from the threads of conformity. Carl Jung, the architect of the unconscious, called this mask the persona, the social face you present to the world. But it is not just a shield, it becomes a prison. Jung warned that beneath this crafted identity lies the shadow, the hidden, often rejected parts of yourself, raw and untamed. The pursuit of normal demands that you bury your shadow deep to avoid its chaotic truth. Yet, denying these parts does not silence them. Instead, it fractures your soul and fractures you. Every time you suppress a violent emotion, a forbidden desire, a unique thought, you are drilling a hole in your own integrity, allowing the poison of self-denial to seep in. Yet this is no mere psychological quirk. It is a coercive coercion embedded in the architecture of culture and history. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this, the philosopher who dared to gaze into the abyss of human existence and challenge the complacency of the herd. For Nietzsche, normal was the tyranny of mediocrity enforced by a morality that celebrated conformity and punished difference. It is, he argued, the death of the individual spirit, the last man who is safe but spiritually dead. Nietzsche's agonizing insight was that normal was not natural or neutral. It was a carefully constructed value system, a slow death by sameness disguised as safety. So why do we obey this slow death? Because the alternative, embracing the unknown self, the chaotic and often terrifying other within us, is perilous. Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher of suffering, spoke of the will as a blind, irrational force driving all life. To live authentically is to wrestle with this will, to acknowledge the suffering and chaos that lie beneath the polished surface of normality. The social scripts that enforce normal are attempts to anesthetize the pain, to cast a spell of predictability over the wildness of human existence. They promise order and acceptance but deliver disconnection and despair. Aldous Huxley's prophetic vision in Brave New World crystallizes this grotesque bargain. Society offers you comfort and pleasure, but only if you conform to an engineered version of normal. Freedom disappears beneath synthetic happiness, and you trade your inner turmoil for a numbing consensus. Huxley's dystopia is not just a nightmare about external control. It is an allegory for the internalized chains you forge yourself, willingly swallowing the soma of societal approval to deaden the ache of your true self. This coercion extends into the very core of your identity, eroding your capacity for authentic choice. Jean-Paul Sartre declared that existence precedes essence. You are not born with a fixed nature, but are free to create yourself. Yet this freedom is terrifying because it demands that you confront the void, the radical contingency of your being. And what do most people do faced with this abyss? They flee into the comfort of normal roles and labels, exchanging freedom for the cage of predictability. Sartre called this bad faith, lying to yourself to avoid the anguish of true authenticity. Viktor Frankl adds a haunting layer to this understanding. A Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, Frankl found that even in the depths of unimaginable suffering, those who found meaning beyond their circumstances could survive and transcend. Yet, the pursuit of normal often steals this meaning. It shackles you to a script written by others, one that denies your unique purpose and the suffering necessary to discover it. Clinging to normal numbs you to the deeper call of life, the call to find significance in your difference and struggle. Together, these thinkers reveal a hidden war raging within you and within society. The war between the comfort of sameness and the terror of authenticity, between the collective's demand for normal and the individual's cry for meaning. This war shapes your emotions, anxiety, shame, annoying dissatisfaction, as you subconsciously battle to keep your fractured self intact beneath a mask that fits too tightly. It warps your behavior, making you cautious, risk-averse, and complicit in your own erasure. And what is the cost? It is the slow death of your identity, the soft decay of your spirit, the quiet hemorrhage of your will to live vividly. It is the paradox of being alive yet invisible, present yet absent, a ghost trapped inside a body designed to mimic rather than to be. This is not a tragedy of the external world alone. It is an internal apocalypse, the annihilation of your potential beneath the all-consuming weight of normal. But the deeper consequences are yet to come. For when the individual spirit is sacrificed on the altar of normalcy, society does not simply lose uniqueness, it forfeits resilience. It becomes vulnerable to despair, cynicism, and the slow rot of meaninglessness. The chains you wear invisibly are the chains that bind us all. And the longer you cling to them, the closer you inch toward a collective oblivion disguised as order. So what remains hidden beneath this quiet terror? What lies beyond the suffocating embrace of normal? The answers have begun to surface, but they are tangled in the shadows you have long resisted. The journey inward is not a retreat into madness but an excavation, a digging through layers of fear, habit, and illusion to reclaim the fracturing self. What you must confront next is not just the cost of normality, but the possibility of rebirth waiting in the ruins. As the force that compels you to be normal tightens its grip, the question now becomes not only why it exists, but whether you can break free, and what it means to do so. Because to stop trying to be normal is not simply to reject a label. It is to face the void, to stare into the shadow, and to claim yourself in the face of everything that tells you to hide. It is the hardest and most urgent act of courage you will ever know. And in that courage, paradoxically, lies not destruction, but the faintest flicker of life, wild, unbound, and utterly human. Imagine the subtle, almost imperceptible web woven around your mind, a network of invisible threads pulling and shaping your thoughts, your desires, your sense of self without a single word spoken aloud. This web is not forged from chains or bars, but from something far more insidious. The silent agreements you make every day to fit, to blend, to be normal. And what is normal, if not a collective hallucination? A shared illusion that everyone is accepting as true simply because everyone else does. Beneath this illusion lies the profound machinery of cognitive biases, neurological wiring, and cultural conditioning, each tightening the grip without your awareness. Consider the power of the confirmation bias, that invisible hand guiding you to seek out information, perspectives, and experiences that affirm the story of normal you've been told belongs to you. Your brain, ever the efficient survival machine, prioritizes consistency. It craves harmony between your beliefs and your experiences. So when faced with the dissonant idea, perhaps I am not meant to be normal, your mind shies away, dismisses the thought, or distorts it until it fits comfortably alongside everything else you think you know. This bias shields you from the terror of uncertainty, but also imprisons you in a feedback loop reinforcing conformity. The thought of deviation becomes a whisper you silence, a shadow you refuse to follow. Neurologically, your brain is wired for safety and social acceptance with almost brutal efficiency. The anterior cingulate cortex, which monitors potential threats and social pain, flags divergence from the group as danger. This is not merely metaphorical. Social exclusion registers in the brain much like physical pain. You feel it viscerally, the tightening chest, the sinking stomach, as if your very survival depends on adhering to the unwritten rules of normal. So, your brain nudges you back into line, into the fold, even when your spirit screams for something else. This deep-rooted neurochemical imperative fuels a silent war within, the autonomous craving for freedom versus the primal drive for belonging. But these internal battles are only part of the story. Cultural conditioning acts as the loom on which this invisible web is woven, crafting a tapestry of expectations so pervasive you scarcely know they exist. From childhood, you are drenched in narratives valorizing normal as synonymous with safe, successful, and respectable. The stories embedded in fairy tales, religious teachings, educational systems, and popular media present a seamless, seductive image. The normal path is the path to happiness, meaning, and societal acceptance. Deviations are dangerous, confused, or broken paths to be feared or corrected. It is a script so deeply internalized that stepping off it feels like stepping into a void without ground or guide. This conditioning does not announce itself with clear commands. It whispers, insinuates, and normalizes until you no longer recognize the cage forged around you. It seeps into your language, fit in, belong, keep it together, and into your early memories, shaping your sense of worth and possibility. The terror of isolation becomes your compass, steering every decision, every self-assessment. Your achievements, clothes, social circles, even your emotions become regulated variables in an equation where the answer must always be normal. And the calculation repeats for millions, creating not only isolated prisons but a collective architecture of limitation and stasis. This invisible tyranny stretches into the societal realm with catastrophic subtlety. When everyone conforms, the mosaic of human diversity fractures into dull uniformity. Innovation falters because true creativity requires the courage to be different, to fail visibly, to challenge assumptions. Resilience fades because the collective is only as strong as its willingness to adapt and evolve, not to survive solely through replication. The weight of normal crushes not only individual spirits but the very capacity of communities to imagine new futures. The risk is no longer just personal stagnation. It is a societal sclerosis, an intellectual and emotional atrophy that leaves you and those around you vulnerable to fear, misinformation, and despair. And yet, because these processes operate beneath the threshold of conscious awareness, their danger remains masked. You might feel a vague dissatisfaction, a persistent gnawing discomfort, but the sources elude you. The terms normal and acceptable hide their true cost behind a veil of routine and habit. This makes the trap all the more deadly. The longer you remain unaware, the deeper your identity is eroded, replaced by a simulacrum crafted to fit external expectations rather than your internal truth. Can you feel it? The silent scream beneath the placid surface, that restless disquiet that never quite fades because your soul knows it is not being heard. The invisible chains tighten with every unquestioned thought, every suppressed impulse, every compromise made to appear normal. It is a slow strangulation masquerading as stability, an erasure disguised as security. The paradox is cruel. In the very attempt to protect yourself from vulnerability and rejection, you sacrifice the essence of your vitality, your creativity, your aliveness. And so, the urgency is not a distant warning but a present, burning horizon. The longer you allow this hidden architecture of conformity to dictate the shape of your inner world, the further you drift from what it truly means to be human, wild, flawed, surprising, and free. The awakening is not found in rebellion alone, nor in mere awareness, but in the recognition of this invisible web and the will to begin unwinding it, thread by frail thread. But this revelation, this fissure in the armor of normalcy, cannot be forced or fabricated. It must emerge from a place both terrifying and sacred. The realization that the greatest threat to your existence is not the chaotic unknown beyond normal, but the deathly familiarity within it. What lies ahead is not simply a challenge to society's norms, but an excavation of the self, and a confrontation with the neurological and psychological forces that have held you captive in shadows you scarcely knew existed. This is no gentle process. It is a reckoning with the very architecture of your mind, a journey into the unseen depths where your true nature has been buried not by external chains, but by internalized fears and conditioned reflexes. Can you endure the unmaking of your familiar self to glimpse what lies beyond the sterile glow of normality? Before you answer, feel the weight of what is at stake, not just for you, but for the fragile human enterprise itself. The urgency is not a slogan or a mystic promise. It is a bone-deep call to wake up from a collective trance and reclaim the wild, untamed, unrepeatable life that is your birthright. The cost of remaining silent and still is no longer abstract. It is the slow death of potential, the erosion of meaning, and the fading of hope itself. Yet, as heavy as this burden is, the darkness is not without a fissure. Somewhere in the shadows cast by the compulsion to be normal, there flickers a possibility, a fragile, trembling pulse of something new. But to reach it, you must first recognize the invisible forces that bind you, understand how they have sculpted your experience, and begin to question the so-called truths that have been inscribed on the very fabric of your consciousness. Only then can the quiet trap be uncovered and perhaps dismantled. And just this, is where the path turns. To break free, you must first surrender everything you thought you knew about yourself. The familiar scaffolding of normal isn't just flawed. It's a lie woven so intricately into your psyche that dismantling it can feel like tearing out your own bones. And yet, what if that very destruction is the only route to genuine freedom? What if redefining yourself means obliterating the notion of identity as a fixed, stable thing to be protected like a fragile relic? Imagine a radical inversion. Instead of striving to fit, you begin to deliberately shatter the mold. Instead of seeking approval, you crave disapproval. Instead of hiding your cracks, you spotlight your fractures. This is not reckless rebellion, but a strategic unshackling. The paradox is clear. By abandoning the pursuit of normal, you gain a power that those who cling to it can never access, the audacity to create your own parameters of existence. Take Nietzsche, for instance. The philosopher who proclaimed God is dead wasn't merely critiquing religion. He was severing the spiritual and moral codes that tethered humanity to mediocrity. In his vision, The Übermensch is not a perfect human, but one who rises above the herd instinct, a solitary figure who forges meaning in a world stripped of external absolutes. Nietzsche's philosophy is a clarion call to reject the complacency of conformity and embrace the agonizing freedom of self-creation. To stop trying to be normal is, in essence, to step into that Nietzschean void and become the architect of your own existence. Or consider the artist Frida Kahlo, who transformed her physical suffering and fractures of identity into vivid, unapologetic canvases. Normalcy for her was a cage too tight. Her self-expression demanded breaking every rule her environment tried to impose. Yet what if you told her that the price of her freedom was isolation, incomprehension, even alienation? She would likely smile with fierce resolve, because she understood that the true cost of normal was the death of the soul. Her life teaches that reclaiming control means prioritizing authenticity over acceptance, even when it risks everything else. This is the mindset shift you're invited into. It is less a conscious goal and more an existential surrender to the chaotic, untamed self underneath the layers of conditioning. It means terrifying yourself with the possibility of being seen as other, weird, or broken, and finding that terror contains a seed of liberation. When you remove the lifeline of societal validation, you don't fall, you learn to fly. The chains are not external, they are internalized beliefs that you can rewrite. How do you begin? One way is to cultivate what the psychologist Carl Jung called the shadow. The shadow is the reservoir of everything you have denied, repressed, and hidden in order to appear normal. For decades, you have pushed this shadow into the darkest corners of your mind, fearing its monstrous shape. But the monster is a part of you, an unexplored source of creativity, vitality, and authentic expression. To integrate the shadow means to stop running from your discomfort and instead invite it in as a teacher. This process turns the internal oppressor into an internal ally. To reclaim control, you must also master the art of selective perception. The world is a kaleidoscope of perspectives, yet the normal lens is imposed like a blinding glare that erases nuance. You have been trained to prioritize the narrowest definitions of success, happiness, and identity. But what if you step back and observe these constructs as arbitrary scripts? What if you saw the normal path not as a highway to fulfillment, but as a constricting labyrinth? Discarding the map doesn't mean wandering aimlessly. It means charting your own course by the stars of your deepest truth. History whispers to us in the voices of those who dared defy the herd. Think of Nikola Tesla, whose ideas were so far removed from the accepted science of his time that he was dismissed as eccentric, if not mad. He refused the lure of popularity and financial security in favor of a visionary pursuit that would shape the future. Tesla's life embodies the ultimate rejection of normal, not as a rejection of society, but as an embrace of the impossible. Or Joan of Arc, who, teenage girl that she was, claimed to hear divine voices commanding her to lead armies. She was branded as insane, a heretic, yet she disrupted the entire political landscape of her era by refusing to be confined by the limitations imposed on her gender and status. Her story is a testament to the power of radical self-belief in the face of crushing opposition. You are not alone in this struggle. Every soul who has ever broken free has fallen into the abyss first. It is the leap into uncertainty, into the unknown self, that births transformation. And though it feels isolating, it is in this solitude that you learn how to be whole. What if, instead of fighting the compelling urge to normalize yourself, you embrace the fracturing? What if your anxiety, your quirks, your sense of not belonging were not obstacles but signpost markers pointing toward your unique path? The current culture tells you that normal equals safety, that deviation means danger. But history, psychology, and philosophy reveal the opposite. Conformity is the slow death, and divergence is life's fierce breath. This shift is not merely psychological, it is tactical. By rewiring your brain's reward system, you can retrain yourself to seek growth rather than approval. Neuroplasticity means your habits of mind can be redesigned. You can condition yourself to find meaning not in comparison but in creation, not in acceptance but in authenticity. Begin by questioning every internal command that demands fit in, blend, don't rock the boat. Each time that voice arises, interrogate it. Where does it come from? What does it protect? And who are you really protecting by obeying it? In that questioning, power germinates. You become the interrogator and the judge, the creator and the destroyer. In this moment, you stand at a crossroads not merely of destiny but of ontology. To continue chasing, normal is no longer a neutral act. It is a self-inflicted wound. To rupture the illusion of normality is to step into power. It requires not just courage, but a radical reimagination of who and what you can be. This is the revolution that dawns quietly inside, the subtle but seismic awakening of self-possession. When you stop trying to be normal, you stop shrinking to fit a world too small to hold you. Instead, you expand and stretch, becoming a force that reshapes norms rather than being shaped by them. The choices before you are stark. Live as a ghost in the machine of conformity, or breathe as a fierce, incandescent anomaly. The path may be lonely, perilous, and uncertain, but it is also the only one that leads to the raw, unfiltered essence of your humanity. And in that essence lies power beyond measure. Can you hear it? The call to break free from the charade of normality is not a whisper. It is a roar beneath the surface, an uprising of your true self. To answer it is to reclaim the reins of your mind, your body, your life. To answer it is nothing short of revolutionary. Look closely now, because everything you thought was solid, your identity, your purpose, the very fabric of reality, may be nothing but an elaborate mirage crafted to keep you chained. What if the world you inhabit, the one insisting you be normal, is not the world at all, but a shadow cast by collective fear? Each norm, each expectation, every quiet plea to conform is a thread in a vast, invisible web designed not to support life, but to ensnare it. You have been taught to treat normality as the ground truth, the unshakable foundation beneath your feet. But what if that foundation is quicksand? What if the pursuit of normal is not a search for belonging, but a slow, suffocating suicide of the soul, one that tricks you into mistaking safety for survival? The irony is brutal. In trying so fiercely to be normal, to not disturb the surface of things, you have been drowning in the very depths you sought to avoid. This is the profound revelation. Normality is a lie so vast it masquerades as reality itself. It is a collective hallucination, a shared delusion that minds uphold to avoid the chaos of true freedom. Society offers you a script, a role, a costume to wear, and in wearing it, you perform a death scene, a slow fading from your own vivid existence into a pale impersonation of life. This masquerade is not harmless. It is a cancer beneath your skin, a poison that eats away at your creativity, your passion, your most elemental self. But here is the paradox that shatters the illusion. The moment you stop trying to be normal, you do not dissolve into anarchy or chaos. Instead, you become the axis on which the world pivots. You reclaim your existence from the fog of conformity. You become the author of a new reality, one shaped by the wild, untamed contours of your authentic self. This is no mere rebellion. It is an ontological awakening, a seismic shift in the way existence itself is experienced and enacted. Imagine stepping off the predetermined path that countless feet have worn smooth and bare, into a dense and uncharted forest. At first, the darkness and uncertainty strike fear into your heart. But as you move deeper, you realize something astonishing. This wilderness is not a prison, it is a cradle. It is the place where your true self is born, where every shadow and every flicker of light reveals a layer of your being previously suppressed. Here, in this raw terrain, you learn that to be free is not to be safe. It is to be fiercely alive. This awakening is not a choice made once and for all. It is a perpetual act, a daily refusal to shrink into the mold, a constant shedding of masks and scripts. It is a confrontation with the abyss, knowing full well that the abyss will stare back into you. But it is also the realization that the abyss is not emptiness but possibility, not void but the canvas of creation itself. You must grasp this truth with every fiber of your being. Normality is the enemy not because it is mediocre, but because it is a betrayal. It betrays the sacred contract you made at birth, to live fully, to experience deeply, to express wildly whatever flickers of divinity and madness pulse inside you. By embracing normal, you seal that contract with a lie. You sign away your freedom, your dreams, your scars, your brilliance. Now ask yourself, what becomes of a world made up of millions of souls strangled by the quest for normal? A world afraid to speak its truths, afraid to dream beyond the cage. A world where genuine connection is replaced by scripted politeness, where eccentricity is pathologized and divergence punished. Such a world is not just bleak, it is a slow march toward collective death, a total anesthetization of spirit masquerading as order. But within this bleakness lies the ember of a radical possibility. What if the future of humanity depends precisely on those who refuse the anesthetic of normality? What if the only way to inhabit reality, to shatter the spell, is to live as incandescent anomalies, bizarre and beautiful outliers who refuse to be tamed? The revolution is not happening on distant streets or in grand halls of power. It is happening quietly inside each person who says, no more. No more hiding, no more shrinking, no more pretending that the great, messy, chaotic, imperfect self is anything less than a cosmic force. So return to that roaring call you felt beneath your skin, that insurgent pulse roaring in the chamber of your ribs. It is the anthem of your true self, the rebel voice that will not be silenced. To heed it is to rewrite reality, to dismantle the scaffolding of normal and build a world where being fully human is not a liability but a radical act of defiance, and ultimately, redemption. See now that the struggle you endured, the pain of feeling out of place, the ache for something beyond the mundane, was never a curse but a beacon. It was the unquenchable spark of the soul fighting to be seen, to be known, to be free. Your wounds are not evidence of failure but the signatures of a journey inward, back to yourself, where the only true normal is the extraordinary truth of being alive. As you stand at this threshold, recognize that the world you inhabit is as malleable as your resolve to reject its lies. The chains of normality can be broken, not with grand gestures, but in quiet, determined acts of honesty, vulnerability, and courage. It is a slow revolution, a subtle dismantling of internal prisons, a reclamation of the wild and mysterious self beneath the mask. Will you shrink back into the comforting shadow of normal, or will you blaze like a comet across the night sky, unbound and unforgettable? The choice is yours, but understand this: the cost of normal is nothing less than the death of yourself. The gift of rebellion is a resurrection more vivid and profound than you have ever dared to imagine. So go ahead, stop trying to be normal. Let your life become the masterpiece of contradiction, the theater of paradox, the living poem that refuses to be tamed. In that refusal lies not chaos but creation, not death but an epic, eternal becoming. Walk into that unknown with open eyes and a fierce heart. The world has been waiting for the real you all along.